I get zero income, it means it is zero income. It means I don't have anything. I'm not gaining anything. So a zero is a zero there. If I put you into ages, I have age of 0 to 1 year, 1 to 2 years. That means that if a student, I mean, a baby is born, probably 1 month, 2 months, because I'm not using months, I'll say the student is at zero age, right? And zero means actually zero. He has not got into a year. So age is also one example of the ratio scale. When we come to weight, if I'm using a balance and then I weigh 0.00, it actually thinks that this object is what? Weightless. Zero means zero. And the difference between 0 to 1 kg is the same as the difference between 1 kg to 2 kg. And that is an example of the ratio scale of measurement. And that is just about the measurement. You know, we've looked at measurement, we've looked at the skills. Just as we looked at tests and we look at the interpretations. Moving on, we want to also know what evaluation is about. Evaluation is another important aspect when it comes to assessment in education. When we say to evaluate, it is a process that we systematically follow to determine the value of someone or something, the merit or worth of something. And so when it comes to evaluation in education, it involves us gathering information and trying to make judgment about how it is worth, about the value, about how effective it is. Okay, so that is basically evaluation. Evaluation is different from assessment in the sense that assessment is about, okay, let me not go there. I'll ask you that question. So quickly, think about assessment and think about what evaluation is talking about. Evaluation is us using information to make judgment about how effective objects or criteria are. The main concern of evaluation is for us to arrive at a judgment on how worthy teaching and learning is happening in class when it comes to evaluation in education. And so when we want to get that, when we want to make that judgment, there are two ways we actually do it. Either we are evaluating formatively or we are waiting for everything to finish and then evaluate summatively. So we have formative evaluation and summative evaluation. Evaluation uses methods or tools to judge student learning and understanding of the material, mostly for grading students and also to report to our officers. Okay. Now, when it comes to evaluation, it is feedback from the instructor to the students about how students are actually doing. So we have students taking tests, teachers scoring them. Then after looking at the score as a teacher, you make a judgment and you give the student feedback. I think one of you gave that suggestion. There are some students that they actually got low marks, but you know inherently that the student has done well, looking at his previous performance. And so you evaluating and giving feedback or looking at the score and then making a judgment and giving feedback is what they call evaluation. Evaluation focuses on grades and may also reflect classroom components like how the students have mastered the content and then has mastered maybe a skill. And so we can also evaluate when we are having discussions in class. We can evaluate the cooperation skills of students. We can also evaluate how the students' attendance, make judgments about it. And then the verbal ability of students. So evaluation you can evaluate everything happening in class. Away from only the grade, you can also evaluate the cognitive aspects and then the affective aspects, just as you can also assess in all those domains. I told you we can do it formatively or summatively. And so when we say formative evaluation, what do we mean? In this case, it is we making judgment of how well the teaching and learning is constantly happening during the period of study. So it's happening when there is a period of instruction. We would define the period. It could be within the teaching period. It could be within a weekly basis. It could be monthly basis, but it is not when the whole program has ended. Okay, so it requires us to be gathering details, give information on means as teacher observations, in your classroom questions you are giving students, in the assignments students are also doing, in the test and quizzes that you are doing. So we can make judgments on such work. Then we give feedback. The main purpose of formative evaluation is for you to give feedback to help the teacher himself and also the learner. In the case of the teacher, you know where the students have weaknesses, and so you try and tailor your pedagogies to that extent. In the terms of the learner also knows his weaknesses and will try to what strengthen such weaknesses. So that is what formative evaluation is there. We want to make a judgment on teaching and learning within a period of instruction, and we're using it to be able to better the effectiveness of learning, providing feedback to help better both the teacher and the learner. But when it comes to summative, it is normally done at the end of the period. So it is not there to be able to help teaching and learning to go on, but then it is helping us to determine how far or the extent that the broader achievements or objectives of teaching and learning has been attained. So I want to go back again. When I talk about formative, we want to look at evaluating, looking at helping the effectiveness of teaching and learning, because it is within the period. So it will help us to be able to look at our weaknesses and then quickly work on them. When it comes to summative from evaluation, the judgments we are making on the assessments are not to be able to see how effective it is or better ourselves, but we are going to use it to compare how far we have been able to achieve the broad objectives of teaching and learning. And that will even help us to make better decisions. Are we going to use this to promote such a student, to give the students a certificate? Does it warrant such judgments because of this evaluation? And so at that point, it is just judgmental in nature. We are judging yours to be able to make specific decisions. And that is summative evaluation, normally at the end of the period of instruction. If we are comparing these two types, formative and summative evaluation, on the basis of purpose, there's a difference. On the basis of content focus, there's a difference. On the basis of methodology, is also different. On the cases of how frequent we do these evaluations, they are different. In the cases of role that they play and how they relate to instructions too, they are different. And so I'll quickly move on from this one, and then we get to differentiate between assessment and evaluation. The question I asked of you. When we say assessment and evaluation, are they the same? If not, what is the difference? Class, are we together?
Yeah,
We are one.
Yeah. Philip.
All right. So the difference between assessment and evaluation, the assessment is just has to do with them using methods, different methods or procedures to be able to, collect information about different characteristics or skills or attitudes of the student. And after making those or getting that information, evaluation will then help you to make judgment and also help you to make decisions based on the judgment that you have made. That is the evaluation. I think that's my opinion.
Okay, that is a good opinion there. Assessment is gathering the information, evaluation is making judgment on those information that we have gathered. Great. Quickly move on to our next part. We want to look at the purpose of assessment. Why do we even assess? Why do we need to gather data or information on students? Now, there are various reasons why we do that. We'll be looking at for planning and organization, for selection decisions, for placement, for guidance and counseling, for giving credentials and certifications, and also to be able to manage our instructional periods too. These are reasons why assessment is important. When it comes to planning organization, when we assess students, it helps the teacher to be able to plan effective lessons. How so? The teacher will use the assessment to find out the entry behavior of students, to know how far students have learned or what they naturally know on the topic that is going to teach, to plan his activities very well so that he will achieve the objectives of the lesson. Now we don't even say objectives, we say learning outcomes. So to know that to attain the learning outcomes of that lesson. Now, if you understand the entry behavior of the student, the teacher will then determine what the student should be taught in the various content you want to teach. So you say entry behavior has to do with what students know, what they can do, and what they cannot do, or what they don't know about the topic. So normally, what do we use? We use reviewing our relevant previous knowledge to check out students' entry behavior, and that is a form of assessment that helps us to know how far students have learned or what they know about topics, so that when we are moving, we know what to do so that we can achieve our objectives of the lesson. In terms of selecting decisions, when we assess students and we want to promote them, we use the assessment scores. If it's the need for awards, if we are going for admissions, we use our assessment scores to do that. So assessment provide information for you to be able to be selected for various promotions, for previous awards and admissions. And so when we say we have cutoff points for these grades, if you want to read this program, that is one of the decisions that we make by using assessment. If you have this grade, you can enter into the medical school, you can go into education. If you can do this, you can do science education and all that. Assessment helps us to be able to make selection decisions. In the same way, it can help us to make placement decisions. Decisions on where we place individuals in terms of how different they are can also be made by assessment. So, as a teacher, looking at your students, you want to prepare groups or form groups that will be working on basic projects. The assessment helps you to know the abilities of the students and know which kind of groups you are forming. When you want to form multi-ability groups, you need different abilities. So assessment to get to know this one is a very able student, this one is slightly able, this is high proficient student, highly proficient, and then all that. You can know this and then put students in groups for courses and also for classes. When it comes to guidance and counseling decisions, assessment helps you to know the weaknesses students have and then maybe encourage intervention programs like guidance and counseling for them. Also, when they want to make career decisions on, which course should I read after senior high school? Which career pathway will probably be effective for me looking at my abilities? We need assessment scores to be able to help students in making such decisions, in counseling them or in guiding them in that regard. And when it comes to being given certificates and credentials, assessment is what enables students to acquire such. If you have to get a first degree and you want a first class, second class, the assessment scores you have built over the years will tell us which certificate we are giving you, even if you aren't being given a certificate. So that is it about the purpose of assessment. And finally, when it comes to making instructional management decisions, assessment is very, very important. In this regard, we are saying that assessment will provide knowledge about how ready your students are for them to learn a particular content you are. So when you come to class and then you see the entry behavior of students, it tells you whether your students are really ready for this level of content you are coming to teach or not. That is why really reviewing of relevant previous knowledge is always important. Sometimes after you have reviewed the RPK, you know that what you have written in your lesson is not going to happen. You must probably descend to teach it. At other times, you do your RPK, you know that, oh, this lesson have already been taught. That means you have undermined what your learners know. Probably you must do a higher grade or do a later objective or a different objective. So Assessment gives teachers the knowledge about how ready learners are for a content you want to teach. It also enables you, the teacher, to set realistic instructional goals that learners will actually follow in class. It will help the teacher to discover those students that need intervention or remediation because their assessment scores will show they are probably struggling in some content areas. It will also help you to be able to select the best technique or pedagogy for your class, and then it helps you to evaluate. Now we know that evaluation means to make judgment. So it helps you to make judgment on how far or the degree of achievement of your objectives, how far your objectives has been attained or met. And that is what, in terms of instructional management decisions, assessment helps us do. Now, basically, I have this short diagram telling us the purposes of assessment. Why do we assess? Now, in terms of the teacher, in terms of peoples, and in terms of policy, how or why do we assess? I say in terms of the teacher, to enhance understanding our peoples, to make instructional decisions, and also to evaluate our teaching method. But when it comes to policy, we assess to evaluate programs and to reinforce teaching and learning. In terms of the peoples, if we make assessments, we are to motivate peoples to learn. Assessment also helps to evaluate people's progress and then monitor people's learning. And you know that, when we do assessment and we don't score, students don't have even the enthusiasm to do more exercises. But if they see the red pen in their books, they are happy, and it gives them motivation. That is why we are seeing when we assess, it motivates people to learn. Those who are learning get motivated, they will do well. Those who are not doing well know that they have a problem and they must sit up. And that is it about the purpose of assessment. Quickly, we want to look at the general principles of assessment. The general principles of assessment. Please, if there is any point in time that you want to ask a question, raise your hand up and let's go. I think I'm moving a little bit faster than how I started because of time. Okay. So, but if any point you want to ask a question, you can quickly use the emoji to raise your hand and I will let you ask your question. So, we want to look at general principles of assessment. Assessment is followed by or governed by various principles. The general, I want to look at the general ones that follows them. There are specific ones for specific types of assessment. But looking at the general ones, what are the things we must look out for? One, the fact that assessment is a key professional skill that teachers should have. So if you are aiming to be a professional teacher, then you must develop your assessment skill. And so inherently, it is a process of professional judgment. We as aspiring teachers should have that idea that we want to build on our assessment skill. We know it's not only about tests, about observations, about how we even test students' skills, psychomotor, behaviors, cognitive, and all that. So it's a key professional skill that every teacher should have. It is a part of effective planning of teaching and learning. It is also very important for us if you see we are professional teachers because it is a great part of our teaching and learning. Assessment is central to classroom practice. It is at the center of classroom teaching. We ask questions orally, discussions going, questions, assessment is always flowing. So it's at the center of what we do in the classrooms. And so test developers must be clear about the learning target that we want to assess. And then we must be able to match the strategies we are taking to be assessing students with the objectives and see whether they can actually help us to assess such behaviors. Assessment should be in line with the objectives that we aim to assess on. And so look at the principle. The first one is to specify what is to be assessed. As we said, general principle clearly states what you want to assess. Which characteristics do I want to check on or see whether my students possess? When this is done, you'll be able to determine the appropriate procedure, what you want to use to assess the characteristic. So first, having a clear idea of what I want to assess on gives you an idea as to what the next thing you should do. The next thing is for you then to select what is the best procedure for the assessment that I want to do. For the procedure, the characteristics I want to assess on, what will be the best tool or procedure for it. And so this is the principle that will let you know that there's a need to select what is the best procedure. Is this test, paper and pencil test, crucial for the kind of assessment or the kind of characteristic I want to assess? Sometimes paper and pencil tests will not be appropriate for some kind of characteristics we want to assess. So it is important that the second principle, we look at what is the best procedure to help it out. As I said, even if we are using paper and pencil tests, sometimes you have to decide, am I going to use multiple choice, true or false, or essay type? Should I use project or assignment, interviews, or observations? Now, the criteria for selecting a procedure is to look at how effective it is going to help you to measure the specific characteristic that you want to do, how it's going to give you an objective assessment score, and how accurate and convenient that procedure will be for you and the students when you are assessing it. So, the intended characteristics and learning objectives and the type of assessment tasks must all be related. The intended characteristics you want to measure, the learning objectives that you have written, and the type of assessment must all work together so that they achieve the maximum effectiveness. Then the third principle is for you to use a variety of procedures. What we are establishing is that assessments might not be only one type of procedure. After you have clearly defined what you want to check on, you have also looked at the procedure that you want to use. Look out for diverse procedures. Only one might not be good enough to make a judgment. So the comprehensive information on students, different or diverse procedures or tools must be used. So this principle affirms the fact that to obtain a complete picture of a student's achievement and development, varying assessment procedures should be used. That means that one assessment procedure to measure a characteristics may not be enough to give you a broad image about the situation that is happening. Let me quickly. Okay. So that is another principle. You are advised, encouraged to not use only one kind of assessment too. And that is why when you look at our standardized tests for WASI, we have objectives, we have the practical aspect, we also have the essay type. So different types, most methods, procedures are made to be able to see or evaluate, assess knowledge content of students in specific areas. The fourth principle is for you to be aware that the procedures what we choose, they have their strengths and they have their weaknesses. And so when you are choosing varying ones, you look at their strengths and weaknesses and take ones that will complement each other's strengths and also their weaknesses. And so the procedures you use depend on the specific characteristics you want to assess, of which each one is not without a limitation. If I go for essay type questions, it has its own limitations. If I go for multiple choice questions, it also has its own limitations. And so if I want to choose different tools, I'm looking at using each to complement each other. So we know that when we do objectives, it doesn't give room for students to give us so much information. And so we don't have enough insight on the reason why the students answer such questions as such. But when we normally use essay type questions, we give room for so much to be written that we might even know why the student wrote this. And there is also subjectivity in scoring them. And so you look at these various weaknesses and see which best combinations can I do, which will help minimize the weaknesses of each of these procedures. And so a teacher must know the advantages and disadvantages of the procedures that they use for assessing students. And then finally, we are saying that assessment is a means to an end, but it is not an end in itself. What it means that after finishing assessment, after we gather information to make decisions, assessment will not end there. The results goes on to be used to make informed decisions that makes us to even start another process again. And so when we make an assessment, it is not an end, but it is a means to an end, a means we use to find out students achievement, students' weaknesses to help us to better our pedagogies, come back and teach it again differently to see. So it's just a means helping us to try and get to an end, but it's not the end itself. That is why the purpose of assessments must always inform the procedure that we use because they are related. It is helping us to come back to find a procedure, helping us to come back to find a procedure, but it is not an end in itself. Now I want to look at educational goals, their outcomes and objectives. Educational goals, their outcomes and objectives. And this part, we are taking them from our old syllabus, the old syllabus that we normally have. What are educational goals? Basically, in general broad terms, an educational goals are those human activities which contribute to the functioning of a society and which can be acquired through learning. They are human activities which contribute to the functioning of a society and which can be acquired through learning. We have those activities that will help a society to function in terms of health, in terms of hygiene, in terms of career, in terms of development. So those are activities that will help a society way to function well, and we can get them by learning. It's what we call educational goals. Now we have what we call broad educational goals, and they are those established by societies based on their needs, and they are organized into subject matter areas. So the broad educational goals are those that societies establish because of looking at the needs of that society. And so after knowing that, okay, we need this, we need that, let's organize them into subjects that we can actually learn, because we are saying educational goals are those that we acquire through learning. And so after getting all these needs, we decide to put them into, okay, chemistry should be a subject to be taught, mathematics should be, chemistry should be. So it is from this broad educational goal that help the teacher to establish specific learning outcomes. So the goals from it we can get learning outcomes from, or learning objectives from. Learning objectives from. Okay. Now, apart from educational goals, we also have educational outcomes. Educational outcomes. They are the product of learning experiences. So after the goals, putting together the things that the society needs and functioning well, and then putting it into learning areas, outcomes are the product of that learning experiences or the end result of those experiences. Examples of such is that at the end of the day, after going through all the learning, there should be something like knowledge. So the product of going through learning is for you to be able to know. So you gain knowledge. For you gain understanding of a basic concept. You can be able to apply knowledge, application of knowledge. You will gain thinking skills. You will possess general skills. Your attitudes will be positive. You will have interest in the good things in life. You will appreciate life, and you make adjustments. So these are the outcomes, the end result of learning, and which are educational outcomes. And so educational goals and outcomes tend to be broad and cannot be achieved in just a single instructional setting. And so we put them into long-term plans. And because of these educational goals and outcomes, we have placed them now into various programs that, okay, this junior high school, this senior high school, let's break those bits into what to be learned in the basic school, what to be learned in the senior high school to be able to achieve these outcomes, which will at the end of the day help the society to function well by attaining our educational goals. We should also know that educational goals are for the interest of the society for it to function well. And so they guide educators in the education system to be able to put in place various programs that will help us get individuals in specific areas to help the various parts of the society to function well. So we know that in the society we need a health facility a health center which will be operated by nurses and doctors. We need school that teachers will run. We need a bank that we have bank officials in there working. We will need what again is a very important facility in the society. Hello, class.
Police station.
A police station, yes. So we need police officers to be able to work in the so which programs can we put in place that will help get the skills that we need at the end of the day? That is what educational outcomes is there for. Okay, now moving on. Knowing this, we now break them into instructional or learning objectives. Instructional or learning objectives. And that comes down to become that statement that specifies a measurable behavior of a learner. So we want to know what a learner will be able to do as a result of instruction. So we have broken all the big educational goals and outcomes now into various settings, short terms into a long-term program. So for the shorter term, which is the learning objective, you want to look at what will the learner be able to do as a result of sitting in this instructional period. So how do we measure these behaviors? The objectives are there. So this objective tells what the teacher would like his students to be able to do, to be able to fail, or to be able to value at the end of an instructional segment. And so we have specific instructional objectives, which are stated whenever we are preparing a lesson plan. And we use what we call action verbs. That shows the definite observable responses. And so we call them behavior objectives. Specific action verbs, like at the end of the lesson, the students will be able to describe, explain, differentiate, distinguish, evaluate. These are the action verbs we normally use in our objectives. A well-stated instructional objective will clarify the type of performance the teacher is willing to accept as evidence that the instruction was successful. So you don't say, I don't know, the students will be able to know the classification ranks. How will the student be able to know? That is where the action verb come in. They need the students able to state the various ranks in classification. All the various ranks in classification, then you have stated clearly what the student should be able to know to tell you that he has mastered. What will be the evidence for the student being able to say he has performed better? And that is why for instructional objectives like that, when we are stating them, a number should be there. If yes, they have a lot of examples, so a student will be able to describe 5 reasons why the society is mostly untidy. So you quantify numbers, then you'll be able to describe reasons. You should quantify numbers if you have a host of answers to the same question. And that is about instructional objectives or learning objectives. For us to be able to write a very good instructional or learning objective, it must have these characteristics. So a good instructional objective should have the behavior in there, should be measurable. It should be something that we can actually measure. It should be time bound. Now go back to the measurable. So that is why when you say a student will be able to know, we can't measure knowing. How do we measure knowing? That is why we don't use know, but we want to use a verb that will show that actually we can measure it. Then it is time bound within the instructions. So that's why we say at the end of this period, the end of this lesson. So that is the time bound there. You can also have your objectives. So by the end of this week, after maybe 2 times you have met them, the student should get to know this. And that is your personal objectives, time bound. Then you have achievable. The objective achievable, looking at the situation you are in, or the class you are in, the school you are in, the resources available to you. Is this achievable? Is it observable? Is it something we can actually observe with our senses? Is it specific and also relevant? So we measure learning objective by looking at these characteristics. Okay. Then, why is it important for us to have instructional objectives? We do need this because it provides us with a basis that is sound for us to select instructional materials. content and methods that will help us in our classrooms. So if we have an objective, it helps us by finding out which materials will be needed for this objective to be attained, which content or which methods will also be needful. It also helps to find out whether we can actually accomplish those objectives, and they serve us as organizers to students in learning. What we mean by they serve as organizers to students is that they provide students with how they should organize their own efforts towards helping you, the teacher, to achieve those objectives. And that is why we are always said that when you teach in class, during your introduction, you must always tell your students the objectives of that lesson. You must always tell your students the objectives of the lesson so that they will tune their minds to also achieving that lesson at the end of the day. If I come to class and I say that by the end of my lesson today, you should be able to name organic compounds, or you should be able to learn IUPAC naming of common chemicals. And I tell my student and they note it down. And by the end of the lesson, they sit down to look at it. Have I been able to name compounds using IUPAC? So they tune them to put in their efforts to help achieve the objectives, and also help them to know whether they have actually gotten to attain those objectives with you at the end of the lesson. Okay. Then we move on to, yes, Godfred.
Madam,
Godfred.
madam, we are still on the objectives. Can we make this? Can we make this as an objective? Like at the end of the lesson, learners can describe the shape of the it. Can we use can?
No. Can is not a can. What is it? It's a verb. Can. It's not a word we normally use for objective. First, it was would. Then it's become should. This should or would.
So this, with this one, can I remove the can and then go straight like learners describe the shape of the it?
Learners describe, because there's a probability that not all your learners will be able to do that. You can't say they did. Because you see the terms that you are using, it seems like they can, they do it. Learners describe, I don't know, learners describe this, they explain that. No. I'm still contemplating on this would and should, because one of them is outdated. Learners would be able to. We normally use should be able. Robert, what do you think?
Madam, I wanted to say that it's normally should.
You saying the should brought my mind to it. I think the should is what is outdated though. Ata, what do you also think?
So what I know is that you write a learner should be able, or no, a learner will be able to.
Yeah, I think I'll clarify this again by next lesson. Within should and would, that is the word. One of them was outdated and one came up that should and would. I think should is outdated and we say would.
Yeah.
Hello, madam.
But I'll clarify which word exactly. But you know, yes, please. Ata yeboa.
So, madam. Hello. Can I go on?
Yeah, we are listening to you.
So, with
Yes,
what
please.
he said, can. I'm also thinking like maybe you may not use learners, but you can say a learner, which means that out of the total number of learners you have in the classroom, at least maybe one of them can, explain or describe what he's talking of.
Now, if only one of your learners is achieving your objectives, then you haven't really done well as a teacher.
Yes.
But the learner objective, when we are stating, we don't say that it is all the learners that will understand or should, but we say a learner.
Yes. That is why you
So
don't say all learners, and you also don't say a learner. You say at the end of a lesson, the
a
learners will
learner.
be able to. You do a learner.
No,
Okay, you do a
we don't
learner.
use
Okay, we
learners.
do a student.
We do a student, which is
Yes,
one.
a student.
So which is one person. So it's equally the same as a learner, which is one person. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you should teach to only one person to understand. But we are saying that at the end of the lesson, at least even if nobody understands, we will get one person who will be able to tell you something.
I see Robert is giving you thumbs up. Let me take George. What do you also think?
Madam, what I know is that you state your objective by saying by the end of the lesson, the student will be able to. So you are centering everything on one student, but you are using one student for all the students. So you say the student would be able to, or a student will be able to. WILL.
For will there, we have crossed that one out
Yeah,
for a while now. Will there you trim wood that to say wood ne should ne
Okay, okay.
The will means some people would have, some people will not, like but we use more of the would and should, that kind of future words.
Okay.
I am quickly
think that
trying to find out the exact word, but I think if I don't get it now, I'll get it to you by next lesson. So it's important, nowadays we don't really use that. We use LIs and LOs. You come there. That's why I'm saying the new curriculum is different. That's why I forgot how this one. The new curriculum is a bit different. So you will look at this. I think in Unit 3, we'll take it out, or Unit 2, you'll look at comparing the old curriculum, new curriculum, and what we do and what we don't do with them. Okay, so what it means is that when we are writing instructional and objective, generally, they should be observable, they should be observable, they should be measurable, they should be achievable, they should be time-bound, relevant, and specific. Using the action verbs, and then giving out what exactly they should know. If it comes to numbers, let's be specific with the numbers that at least they should be able to state to know that they have attained these kind of objectives. Okay, now when it comes to categories of instructional learning, they fall under the 3 different categories: knowledge, skills, and attitudes. Knowledge, skills, and attitudes. Knowledge falls within more of the cognitive, skills more with the psychomotor, and attitudes is affective. A couple of frameworks have been developed by some educators to identify various instructional objectives according to Bloom's taxonomy of education objectives. So under Bloom's taxonomy, we have this triangle or hierarchy where we have the base as knowledge and then the highest as evaluation. A lot of changes has gone on with that. We'll look at them in our subsequent sessions as we move on today. So we have Bloom's taxonomy, we have knowledge, understanding, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. That was in 1956. There's a current new one that I think in the next session we'll look at it. Now, when we are stating instructional and objective, a specific instructional objective is stated using an action verb. I've talked about that. That will indicate a definite observable response. So we use words like state, describe, explain, solve, draw, label, classify. So we avoid words, ambiguous words like to know. The student will be able to understand. The student should be able to appreciate or internalize. How do we measure this? So we don't use such ambiguous verbs. A meaningful stated objective communicates the intent to teaching. For such, it must answer the following questions. If we are writing a good objective, then it must be able to answer these 3 things. First, what should the learner be able to do? So in terms of performance, under what condition do the teacher want the learner to be able to do that? And how well must it be done? So keep these things: performance, conditions, and criteria. What should the learner be able to do? You should be able to explain, you should be able to describe. Under what condition the teacher want the learner to be able to do it? How well must it be done? Okay, now, so we have an example. So you have seen performance, conditions, and criteria. An example, by the end of the lesson, the student would be able to balance at least two redox equations in the acidic medium. So that's our corrected me. So we are now, you use would, not should. So by the end of the lesson, the student would be able to balance at least two redox equations in the acidic medium. In terms of performance, the word is there. What do they perform? Balance. To be able to do what? Balance. What is the condition we are looking at? What are they looking at? Redox reaction is the condition they are talking on. Which criterion that the student will get to know that at least it has been achieved? At least two. At least two. So the student to be able to balance at least two redox equations in acidic medium. Another example I have here, you will tell me where the 3 past 4, performance, condition, and criteria. By the end of the lesson, the student will be able to classify at least 4 living organisms into kingdoms. Class, help me. Wait, what is the performance in this objective? What is the condition and what is the criteria here? Hello? Yeah. Ataya boy, you can talk.
Okay, so with this, the classify is the performance. The classification is the performance.
Okay.
Then the at least four living organisms is the criteria. Then the kingdoms there becomes the condition.
I think you should look at it again. Performance is correct, but within condition and criteria, let's go back there again. The condition has to do with maybe the content area you're talking about. And the criteria means at most what at all, which number will show.
They say at
So
least
let's go back to it.
they say at least four. So that is the criteria.
You're having a network in this year. So yeah, boy, can you
So
take
I'm
it
saying,
again?
that the at least four is a criteria. At least four is a criteria. Then the performance is the classification. Then you are classifying them into what? Kingdoms, which becomes what? The condition.
Okay, that's fine. So we have that. We have the performer, what they are doing, which condition, the criteria. And so if you have any objective, you are supposed to be able to use this lens to pass through. I believe that sometimes the criterion might not be there depending on the area. So, okay, let me know if you say it. There's a hands-on activity that we want us to do. Select any topic of your choice and then write two instructional objectives for the selected topics. So I would want you to write instructional objectives. Let me give you just 2 minutes. Any topic that comes to mind, just write, give me one objective that you think you can write. And let's see whether you have the characteristics in them. I'll take just two, one lady, one guy to give me theirs, and then we'll move on. I hope we are together. Our time starts now. We are writing objectives, instructional objectives, and we are telling us the criterion, the various characteristics, whether performance criteria or conditions that you have written in the any topic in your mind you can talk about. Thank you. Okay, George is ready.
Yes, madam.
Yeah.
Mine is by the end of the lesson, the students would be able to state 5 metal elements from the periodic table.
Okay, so take us through the various characteristics. George, let us know your performance, your criteria, and your condition. Hello, George, are you with us?
Hello, madam.
Yes.
You said I should take you through. I should take us through the criteria.
Yes, the performance. Let us know your performance in the stated one, the criteria, and then the condition.
Okay, the performance is this stating of metals, writing metal elements, being able to write elements which are metals from the periodic table. And then the criteria is, I think the criteria is the number of the element, a metal element that they are writing. Then the condition is being able to study the periodic table or identify elements from the periodic table.
I think George has crumpled everything together for us. Kindly state the objective again and let us help you. And let's see.
Okay. I said by the end of the lesson, the students will be able to state 5 metal elements from the periodic table.
Okay, so state 5 metal elements on the periodic table. Now your performance is to state. Okay, then the condition is metal elements on periodic table. Okay, and then your condition, I think your criteria is 5 for them to be able to state 5 of them. So yours is not at least, but you said 5. A definite 5 is your condition. And so if the student is able to state 5, then that means that your objectives have been achieved.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other one? Okay. Yes, Anita.
Okay, so mine is by the end of the lesson, the students would be able to compare at least 2 differences between food chain and food web. Hello?
Okay, that's nice. We are hearing you. Give us the characteristics.
Okay, so the performance here is to compare. And then the condition is the differences between the food chain and then the food web. And the criterion is the 2 differences.
Very good. 2 differences. Thank you very much. So that is it. So let's always, whenever you write objectives, think about these 3 things and see whether all of them can be found in our objectives. Now, questions for evaluating objective. One thing you should think about, is my learning objective appropriate for the level of my students? Are the objectives limited to only the important outcomes for the course? Are the objectives consistent with established learning standards? Are the learning objectives consistent with the philosophy of education of the country you are working in? Make sure all of these align with any objectives you do. It is appropriate for the level that your students are, that we are limited to only the important aspects. You don't bring in other things that might not be relevant, and then they are consistent with what has been established at the learning standard for your school or class, and then with the general philosophy of education we have. Now let's move to the domains of assessment. We have 3 different domains. We have the cognitive domain, which is characterized by the Bloom's taxonomy. But before we go to even that aspect, let's know what is meant by the taxonomy of learning outcomes. When we say taxonomy of learning outcomes, they are highly organized scheme for classifying outcomes into various levels of complexity. So we have organized various schemes that we are classifying the outcomes that we have said about education, what is the end product of our education, into various levels of how complex they are. So generally, we have categorized these into three different domains. We have the cognitive, we have the affective, and we have the psychomotor. When it comes to the cognitive domain, they are the outcome that focuses on knowledge and abilities that are requiring the brain. So in terms of memory, in terms of thinking, and in terms of reasoning processes. The cognitive domain refers to educational outcome that focuses on knowledge and abilities requiring memory, requiring thinking and reasoning. And we see all these things are happening in our brain. Now, Bloom's taxonomy is very, very popular in reference to this domain, and it's one of the things that is adopted by WAEC for testing. And when it comes to Bloom's taxonomy, it is the comprehensive outline of a range of cognitive abilities that might be taught in a course. Not can be taught, but it might be taught depending on how complex the ranges. It can be described as general instructional outcomes. And under Bloom taxonomy, it has been categorized into 6 major categories, from the simple to the complex one. Now we have from knowledge, understanding, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. This is it for 1956. Now, currently, they have another one, which is normally the verbs. That is there. I'll check it out. I'll let you see it before then. Now, moving on, we want to know at the knowledge level what is happening there. It involves the ability to remember or recall material that we have already learned and constitute the lowest level of learning in the classroom. So if you're able to just remember and then recall something that you have learned, that is it about the knowledge. And so if you are using knowledge, some of the verbs that we can actually look at is to define, to arrange, to who, recall, select. These questions or verbs helps us to just recall, remember, knowledge, whatever we have probably learned before. Then when we come to an assessment or instructional objective that we can use knowledge to assess it, we can write that by the end of the lesson, the student will be able to state at least 3 excretory organs. And objectives normally work with assessment question. So if we write such an objective, then corresponding assessment question is to ask the student to state 3 excretory organs. State 3 excretory organs. So objectives link with the question assessment question. When it comes to comprehension or understanding, we have you being able to grasp the meaning of material. So some of the verbs we normally use is explain, infer, paraphrase, discuss, interpret. So by the end of the lesson, a student will be able to differentiate between animal cell and plant cell. This one, if you don't have understanding of the concept, you might not be able to differentiate. Then we come to the next higher level, which is application. And when it comes to application, we have being able to use rules, methods, principles, or theories that you know to concrete situations that are new and unfamiliar. So you transfer knowledge to new situations, or you use abstract forms in particular and concrete situations. For such, we use verbs like to solve, to operate, to demonstrate, to discover, to implement, and all that. Then we have another higher order one from application. We have analysis and the ability to see patterns, break down a piece of material into components. So analysis, we are breaking down and showing how things are related. So we use verbs like analyze, criticize, calculate. That is for analysis. And then for finally, the higher one, we have synthesis. I think synthesis before evaluation. Synthesis means putting together. Just as analysis is breaking to see the relationship, synthesis means putting them together to form a new whole. And for such, we use words like assemble. We use words like what they call it, construct, plan, produce, and all that. Then the highest order in Bloom's taxonomy is the evaluation, where we appraise and we compare features to make judgment. Just as we know what evaluation in education means, to make judgment, evaluation in here on Bloom's taxonomy means to make judgments about some features that we have seen. And it's the highest order that we can evaluate on, or we can assess when it comes to cognitive dimensions. So we can use contrasts to moderate, to support. We can even use discuss, but the type of question, the type of word that will follow the discuss will tell us whether it's the evaluation or it is just at the understanding point. So if I say by the end of the lesson, the student will be able to justify why flamboyant is insect pollinated. This is a very higher order question, evaluation, where you must make judgment after everything that you have learned. So that is it about the Bloom's taxonomy, which is the predominant taxonomy under the what do you call it, cognitive domain. Now I said I was going to show you the new one that is in for the Bloom's taxonomy. I hope you can see my screen here. Okay, so now we don't normally use the nouns, we use the verbs. And then something to have changed about the topmost one. At first, it used to be remember. Now, remember means what? Knowledge. First, it was knowledge. Now it's remember. Then we had understanding. Now it is now what? Understand. Then we had apply, application. Then it became now apply. Then after application, we have analysis. Now currently, it is the word form. It is called analyze. Then after analysis, we used to have what? Synthesis. And now synthesis has now become evaluate. To synthesize means to put together, to create. But now to put together has become a higher order than even to evaluate. So evaluate has come down and then put together has gone up. Now this is the current version of Bloom's taxonomy. It has been reviewed and this is what we normally use. So kindly use them. Sometimes in your objectives, you will see remember, you will see knowledge. If it's remember there, please choose remember, because that is the current knowledge about it, about the Bloom's taxonomy that we know. Are we together here?
We are one.
Yeah, one.
Now, apart from the cognitive domain, we want to quickly look at the other domains, which is the affective and then the psychomotor. They also have their own, let's say, taxonomies that we use for them. And so let's quickly look at them. When we take the affective domain, it is concerned with our heart. So outcomes that focus on our feelings, our interests, our attitudes, and our emotional state. So they're related to the heart. And as a teacher, you observe your students display their feelings, their interests, what they like, and you help them to shape them. Those who are shy, those who are outspoken, those who are hard-hearted, those who are quick-tempered, those who are slow. As a teacher, all these things matters to you, so you help shape them. So Crathwell and other researchers propounded what we call the taxonomy of affective domain. Now, this is how it is. In the taxonomy of affective domain, the basic one is receiving or attending. Then at the receiving or attending, we are looking at, are you willing to be aware of the setting or situation? Gives attention by choice or open to experience? Are you at that point? If you see a student who is at the point of receiving or attending, that means that he is willing to be aware of the situation he is inside. He gives attention by his own choice and is open to experience. And the higher one is to respond. Is the person willing to participate? You see an obedient volunteer, he finds satisfaction in participating or is ready to respond. So, it is different from just being aware. At the receiving end, you are just being aware. At the responding end, you are willing to participate. Then at the valuing, which is a higher order affective domain, it is, are you motivated to invest? Choose to behave in a certain way frequently. You begin to identify with the behavior and commit to it. That is when we have value in it. Then we have organizing, where value becomes systematic. You can compare and contrast value and choices. You begin to order and prioritize values. You choose to commit to certain values and also behaviors. Then the final highest order is for you to be characterizing. You act consistently due to an internal belief that you have about something. You can articulate a philosophy or a worldview, and you can break down complex situations and respond accordingly based on the value that you have created or by your own code of personal behavior. So that is it about taxonomy of affective domain. We have people at the receiving end, you have those at the responding, those at the valuing, those organizing and characterizing. Okay, so I think I've talked about all of them. Let's quickly move to the I'll send the slides. So any information that probably I will not hint on, you will read on them. Let's quickly get to the psychomotor domain, where psychomotor deals with the use of your hands. Deals with the use of your hand. So this domain features the behavior that represent the mastery of physical skill or manipulative ability. In science, it is observed by observing someone perform an action, imitating and copying an action, practicing an action, and adapting to special situations. So mostly psychomotor domain, we see it in our chemistry or our science practicals. Sometimes we demonstrate for students to also perform. So in science, psychomotor domain is normally seen in our practical exercises. So we use words like to be able to measure. We ask students to measure masses, to measure distances, to measure a lot of things in science. We ask students to balance, to dissect in biology. We ask them to estimate, to calibrate, to assemble. These are all ways that help to show psychomotor domains. Then we have Simpson's category that helps us in psychomotor domain. It's one of the taxonomies. Under Simpson category, the psychomotor domain is divided into 7. At the end, we have the perception, which is the base. Then going up, we have set. Then we have guided response, mechanism, complex or overt response. We have adaptation and then origination. Now, each of them has its own meanings. I have 7 minutes more. Let me quickly see. I can go through them. The first one, the base one, which is under perception. When you talk about perception, is your ability to use one's sense organs to obtain cues that will guide your motor activity. So if you're able to relate the sound of a beat to a dance type, so you see that this dance is an amapiano dance or amapiano sound. So this is the dance that should go with it. This dance is a kete dance. So this sound is a kete sound. So let's use a kete dance. Like being able to do that is a perception. At that end, you have been able to categorize your skills under perception when it comes to psychomotor domain. The next higher one is set. That is how ready you are to take a particular action. So if you are going to demonstrate the proper way to read the meniscus of a liquid, how ready are you to take that particular action? Okay, to give a proper way to do something. That is at the set level. Then we have the guided response level. It involves the early stages of learning a complex skill. So if I want to learn how to clock a gun, or how to load a gun to shoot, that's a guided response. When at the early stages, when you want to learn such complex skills, or driving, the first time you want to start driving, so how to start a car for the first time, those are guided responses. So as you're doing it, if you are at that stage in your complex activity, you are the guided response stage. Then you have the mechanism stage, in which when you have learned an activity and it become a habit and the movements are performed with confidence and proficiency, then that means you have gotten to the mechanism level. So you see DJs, how they are pushing out their discs and moving here and there, and those who are very good with typing, they even take your eyes off the keyboard and they are typing. That means now this has become a habit and their movements are done with confidence and proficiency. They have gotten to the mechanism stage. Then we have another stage we call the complex overt response, and that is the ability to perform complex tasks or acts. That's tasks we know are very, very demanding, but you can perform it, like flying an aircraft. It's not easy. Playing a piano, combining your head, your hands, and everything to be able to do that. That is also another complex overt response. And then finally, we have the adaptation part, which is for you to be able to modify movements to be able to fit special situations. So you have people like Afrobeat. It was a new crop of sound that came out by people fusing African music with what. So it's a new saying that have been created, modify a local rhythm to suit a foreign song. So that is also at that point where you can do that. So under psychomotor, being able to do these are some of the domains. Are you at the point where you are just pursuing perception? You have senses that tells you that you can do this activity, or you are ready to do it, or you are at the point where you have started doing it. That is the guided response, or you have been able to do it now it's become part of you. You are at mechanism level, or you have been able to now finish it and performing even complex tasks in that area, or now you can even use your mind to create something new out of the old, and that is at the adaptation level. And that ends it for the psychomotor domain. Finally, we have the origination, which is the highest for the psychomotor domain under Simpson's category. And that's the ability to create new movement patterns to meet a specific need or particular problem. So you can now create a new computer software, create a new musical pattern, and that is it about the psychomotor domain. 3 more minutes. Please, questions. Helen. Helen, do you have a question for us?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Class, anything you want us to put? We have just 3 minutes. I always like to be on time because I know you have to go for breakfast and all that. We all have to put together our thing before our next lesson. Yes, Bernard. Bernard is here.
Hello, madam.
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear
Please,
you.
I want to ask. Hello.
We can hear you. Please speak.
Please, I want to ask that when you are preparing for your end of semester report card, is it an example of assessment or evaluation?
When you are preparing for, when you are conducting the exams, you are assessing. That
Yes,
means you are obtaining information. But when you are putting everything in writing, evaluation also comes in. You are not only giving the soul, but you are making decisions. You are making judgments.
Okay.
So all of them are at play when you are preparing report card.
Okay, madam. Thank you, madam.
You're welcome. Please, any other question?
Hello, madam.
Yes.
Hello, madam.
Yeah, Helen, we can hear you.
Okay. When I didn't get the mechanism of the Simpsons category.
When you are at the mechanism stage, it means that an activity that you have learned at the guided response, it was the early stage, you were now learning, but now you have learned it at the point that now it has become part of you, that you now do it effortlessly without any hinges, and you conform with it confidence and proficiency.
Okay.
So, for example, the DJs, when they are now moving, if you are a professional DJ, you see how they are moving their hands here and there. And without anything, they are just doing it. And those who are very good with typing, they're typing out, their eyes are even somewhere. They know that it's very, so now it's become part of them. Now they do it confidence and proficiency. You have moved away from the first time guided response, but now you have become part of you. It's a mechanism. Okay, that's fine. So it's actually 9 o'clock. Thank you all for coming. I will send the slides to the group page, and then we'll meet hopefully next week, and then we continue on this. But I'll meet you at 4 to 6 for development. Have a great day. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Madam, bye.
Hello, colleagues. Those of you who have registered, please can you tell us those who are doing chemistry biology? Is there anybody doing chemistry biology here?
Yes.
Please, has anyone registered for the course already?
None of us has registered.
Oh, okay, I just want to be sure if we have science and society as part of our course.
Wow. Biology.
Hello, yes, we do.
Chemistry biology.
No, science and
I don't know if science and society is part or not.
Yes, please, it's fine.
Okay, Philip, let me check. Okay.
It's not typing.
Okay.
Science and society, and then organic chemistry,
Please,
practical organic chemistry.
No, practical organic chemistry is not fine. It's analytical chemistry.
So far, the ones I have it's assessment, development, stereochemistry, analytical, and then PCK. That's pedagogical content knowledge
You're supposed
in
to have
chemistry.
science, technology, and society. You have that.
please,
Science,
when are
technology,
we
society.
meeting, madam? Before next week.
We are meeting here again at today at 4 to 6.
Please,
For
do you
the
have technology?
different course or the same course?
No, a different course.
I'm
That's
talking about this,
development of science technology, teaching material.
but I'm talking about this same course. Maybe we'll meet for continuation before next week. Is there any information?
Well, no, there's no any information like that. She only gave 7 to 9.
Okay.
It is the next lesson that we will have it on Saturday and then Tuesday 7 to 8 p.m.
Okay.
I have not registered yet. That's why I just want to be sure if science technology.
I
So in
think
total, we are doing
have
5 courses on 6.
we are doing 7.
7. Please, can you go through them for me?
Yes, the first one is analytical chemistry, and then
Okay.
we have assessment in science education.
Okay.
Basic soil science.
Please, are you doing chemistry?
Is that what?
Please, are you doing chemistry?
Yeah, I'm doing chemistry and biology.
Chemistry, like, so chemistry is your main, right?
No, biology is my main.
Okay, then chemistry is my main, so we are not doing soil science.
Philip.
Yes, as someone.
I'm a registered.
Yes.
We are doing 8.
Okay.
First one,
Philip, the basic soil is part of the chemistry group people too.
Philip,
we are also doing chemistry. The biology major course is genetics.
Okay, so we are doing basic soil science. 2.
Basic soil science, okay.
Analytical chemistry. 3. Practical organic chemistry. Stereochemistry. Science, technology, and society.
6.
Okay.
Assessment in science education. Pedagogical content knowledge in chemistry. 1. Development of science teaching materials. So we are doing 8.
You are doing 8, right?
Yes. So the next lesson is what?
The next, unless I check because I wrote only 5 down.
We are doing 8.
9:32. So right now, have you been able to identify those that are online and those that are face to face?
No, I just entered the campus.
Okay, so you can only find out, then you give me a call, right?
So the next one is what? Hello.
Then okay, for what I have here, 9:30 to 11:30, we have PCK in chemistry, that pedagogical content knowledge in chemistry.
Okay.
That is 9 to, but I have to add the soil, basic soil and those things. Then I will check the timetable again.
And science, technology, and society is part.
Okay.
So we are doing 8.
All right.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Bye. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Bye.